The idea of the objective of this seminar is to present the effectual logic, okay? In broad terms, 1 hour is not enough, okay? But have an idea to make you pick up the interest for it if you want to go further, okay? And to outline the guiding principles of this reasoning, of this logic, effectuation logic. That's the idea of our presentation. What is effectuation exactly? What does it mean? Effectuation is the reasoning expert entrepreneurs use when making decisions, okay? This was, let's say, discovered by Professor Sarasvathy, during her PhD research. She studied decision process of, I think, 30 expert entrepreneurs, okay, serial entrepreneurs, and discovered they use a different logic from the traditional managers, okay? And she was able to structure this logic in several ways of thinking, let's say. And this effectual logic is based on some broad ideas, okay? The broad ideas that are related to how entrepreneur in how entrepreneur makes her decision, his or her decision in a startup. First of all, entrepreneur is defined by what she does, not what she is, okay? Entrepreneur is to act, is not something that you are and then you do. No, it's like Simone de Beauvoir told about women. We are not born a woman, you become a woman. That's the same idea. You became an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur, okay? And the other thing, the broad idea of effectuation logic is does not make sense to plan and set specific goals when you have no idea of what your product is, okay, or your market will turn out to be, okay? The idea of effectuation is not to be to plan too much, okay? And therefore, because what you do, and because sometimes the specific goals and the plans cannot be very well defined, the goals that you have in your company are contingent. What that means? It means that they will change depending on their circumstances. And the case here is the circumstances are the means that you have, okay? So, what most specialists say when they are dealing with startups, what they say? They usually say that you should behave like established company, or what it does means. It means that you should predict, set goals, plan, do the market research, do the financials, that usually the professors, academics, or counselors, advisors tell you to do. Behave like established company. But it does not always work like that with new ventures. And why that not always work? It doesn't work because when you have a startup, a new venture, it's not possible to know the future. Your company is too young to know what will happen. How will you plan if you don't know what will happen? And it's not sometimes not possible to measure the market. You don't have an idea of your product. You don't have the idea of the market is, what the size of the market, who will buy your product. So how you plan, how you behave like an established company if you don't have this information. That's why effectuation could be helpful. And you, of course, you don't have resources. That's most important. We'll talk a lot about the lack of resources today. Most established companies, just a moment here, sorry. Most established companies has all the resources they need, okay? But most startups don't have this luxury. Let's think of, sorry, I'm not, sometimes the presentation, the PowerPoint doesn't work as I wanted. Let's think that established companies are like managers. The managers in established companies, they are like a chef at his home or her home, okay? I want to do a dish. I want to produce a dinner, okay? I choose a recipe, I buy the ingredients, and I work at my kitchen, okay? That's the managing established companies. But the reality of a startup is different, okay? It looks like a mess. That's more or less what happens in a startup. Entrepreneur in a small startup is like a chef, but at a friend's, another place. She has to find what ingredients and tools are available and work in a kitchen that she's not familiar with. That's the reality of a founder in a small startup, okay? So now we can compare effectuation and causation. Effectuation, the logic of expert entrepreneurs and new ventures, especially, and causation, the logic that is usually related to manager in traditional companies, established companies, okay? Both are logics and both are used to make decisions. Both are related to means and ends, cause and effects, cause, causation, effects, effectuation. Okay, now I'll explain the difference between them. Causal logic, when you're thinking about causal logic, the end is given, then you choose the means to create it. So, for example, management by objectives. You establish what your end is, what the objective is, and then we will allocate the resources to achieve that. So define the goals and then allocate the resources to achieve them. That's the causal logic, okay? Effectual logic is the contrary. It's just the contrary. The means are given and then you create the ends because you're not very much sure about where you will go with these means. So you discover the resources, see what you can achieve based on these resources, based on your path. So causal logic, first the ends and then the means. Effectual logic, first the means and then the ends. Please note that these are used at the same time, but sometimes by the same person. They overlap, they intertwine. In my research and the research of always several others academics, they notice that the effectuation is used together besides causation, even in the same company, in the same person. It depends on what decision you're making. You cannot do both at the same decision, but when you can decide based on effectuation in one circumstance, and then you base yourself in causation. You can use both, okay? Here is, I will do a quick comparison about causal and effectual logic in marketing, specifically marketing. That's my area. To give an idea, a better idea of what are their difference, okay? So here, don't be afraid. I will try to do my best to explain here. So what happens in the case of causation, okay? Causation. First, you define the market. It's one of the first things to do. First, you define your market. Then you segment, use the variables that you have. You target based on an evaluation criteria to target the clients or the customers, the segments inside the segmentation. And then you position your product to reach the customer, okay? In the case of effectuation is different. The order is different and what you do is different. What you do in the case of effectuation, let me see here, okay. First of all, the first thing that you do, you start identifying who will work with based on what you know and who you know, okay? Then you define through strategic partnerships, the people that will be your partner to go to come aboard your endeavor or enterprise. And then you align your partners with the segments. And the last thing that you do is to define one of several possible markets. It's the last thing that you do based on your means, based on the partners that you have, okay? Let me clean this and go to the next. Just a moment. Okay. And in which context effectuation is more effective? Sorry, I couldn't help doing this pun. The most effective in our studies, what I study in other academics, we noticed that the context that effectuation is more effective, is more useful, is exactly at the beginning, at the first stage of new venture, okay? And that's why I thought it was so important to have this with Seedstars, because you're talking about new ventures at the first stages, okay? And then why it's more useful to use effectuation logic at the first stages? Because first of all, there are lots of uncertainty and few resources, okay? And what the lots of uncertainty and few resources makes predicting almost impossible, in planning very difficult. So how you will make decisions based on little planning and almost no predicting, okay? How you do that? You use effectuation. Okay, so far so good. Questions? Let's see. Zarina, help me here.
Yes, we have one question already from the beginning. I think you partially covered this topic already, but Paolo was asking, so could you please explain us what is reasoning effectuation and how can we implement it in our startup ideas?
Okay, I think I'll explain more or less. The effectuation logic is a way of thinking and when you're making decisions, specific decisions, okay? And how we will implement is the second part of my presentation. I will show you the guiding principles so you can use these principles on your day-by-day activities as an entrepreneur, okay? I will show you the second part.
Okay, Paulo, then you should stay tuned for the rest.
Yeah.
So, wait a second. We are getting some question. Anil is asking the question, how startups can become mature company after years, but I believe using the effectuation theory. So
this is not exactly the subject of my presentation, okay? When you become mature, if you grow, okay, if you're able to survive. The effectuation, it's what it helps you to be a mature company. It will help you in the moment that you make good decisions and you are able to make your company grow and be established. And probably going a little further in my answer, you start using more causation, because when you got mature, you have the opportunity to be more established, to have more resources, and probably use effectuation less, because you have mature, you can plan a little better, you know more or less what your market is, and then you will able not to use effectuation as much as you would use in the beginning of your company. Okay.
thank you, Carlos.
You're welcome.
Yeah, these are so far the only two questions that we got. I believe by the end of the webinar, we'll have more questions. So everyone, please feel free to drop those questions. And I think we can continue from here.
Okay. Let me. So, answering the question, how to be an effective entrepreneur, how to use this reasoning on your day-by-day decisions. Okay. First principle is called bird in hand. That old proverb, it's better a bird in hand than two in the bush. Okay, that's the idea of the name that the Professor Sarasvathy gave to her guiding principles of effectuation logic. What's the idea here? Exactly what this photo means. Okay, use the means that you have at hand. Okay, what does these means are? What are these means? First, who you are, your traits, skills, preferences. Lots of people start business based on their hobbies. They start a hobby and they decide to earn money with their hobby. So it's a good example of using the means of who you are, your preferences, to start a business. Okay. The other thing is what you know, your education, your experience. In my area of expertise, that is international entrepreneurship, lots of people internationalize very early when they are startup, because they have international experience. Okay, they decided to go abroad very early in their startup, because they have already international experience, so they decided to go abroad. And the most important for me is whom you know. because your personal business context will help you a lot to find the resources that you don't have yet, okay? And I'll explain it a little bit in detail further. The other guiding principle that experienced entrepreneurs have, and it's very useful to think when you have a small startup, is the concept, is the guiding principle of affordable loss. What is affordable loss? Okay, is to know when you should stop. Okay, commit only what you can afford to lose. Okay, the reality of business is that you never decide to, for example, start a new business based on the net present value of the future cash flows of your business, because you barely know what your product is. You have no idea of what your market. So how can you do the financials and do the net present value of your business? You just go, okay? But go with some idea of what you're able to lose, what you can afford to lose, what are the losses that are acceptable to you, okay? And then it can be this idea of only starting a new project. It can be your startup, it can be, for example, uh, internationalizing. You estimate what you can lose if everything goes wrong, okay? How much before giving up if your bet goes wrong, okay? That's why most of expert entrepreneurs, and it's recommendable that you use when you start a new project in your startup. How much I can lose, okay? And this is good because it limits the loss in the worst case scenario. It's a way of being of estimating better your risks, because you know that what you're able to lose, okay? The idea here is to make decisions on acceptable downsides instead of guessing about potential upsides. Instead of always being optimistic and thinking, oh, if everything goes right, I will earn millions of dollars. The idea is if this project goes south, how much I will accept to lose, okay? And usually it does mean that you are not you will not accept to lose your whole business. It's just a certain amount of time or resources that you're committed to that project, okay? This is a very intelligent and smart way to eliminate uncertainty, because if you don't know what will happen in the future, you can just estimate how much you're able to lose, okay? And you don't need to predict outcomes and calculate returns. Life is much easier. You don't have to do all these financial calculations that most specialists say that startups have to do. It's just estimate how much you are able to lose. That's it. The other guiding principle is called Crazy Quilt by Professor Sarasvathy. And I chose an image of a patchwork, Indian patchwork quilt in honor of the nationality of Professor Sarasvathy, because she's Indian. Okay, and this is a good figure of what exactly is a crazy quilt, the guiding principle of building alliances. Okay, alliances. And this image is very good to represent that, because bringing people together, bringing partners, stakeholders aboard your business, it's what will make you have the resources that you don't have, okay? Bring aboard stakeholders that can commit money, of course, that's always we're looking for, investors, but also knowledge, technical knowledge, market knowledge. Bring somebody that knows more than you about your market, and making or her a stakeholder of your business, okay? And sometimes contacts are very important, okay? These alliances, when you build these alliances, when you bring these stakeholders, they will shape your business and will shape your market, because sometimes these people knows more than you about some market condition, or some technical issue of with your product. They will help shape your business. That's why it's Crazy Quilt, because it's people that you are bringing aboard, and they're bringing their contribution to the quilt. Examples of partnerships. Just a moment. For example, the most common, that probably most of you already know, is the product development of a potential client. The concept in lean startup of a minimum MVP is that exactly that you have a potential client that will help you develop your product. It's an example of a strategic partnership. The other example is integrate two or more products of different partners. You sometimes you become your competitor becomes your partner because they have a kind of product that adjusts integrates very good with you, and then you start offering another one. It's very common in software. You do that, and there is no problem with that. Okay. And of course, partnerships are investors, mentors that can help with contacts with their own networks. That they're example of partnerships that you can bring abroad your business to help you expand your network. And the other one's lemonade. It's also based on a proverb. Oh, I love this photo. It's tasty. If life gives you a lemon, make a lemonade. Or as we say in Brazil, if life gives you a lemon, make a caipirinha. It can be both, okay? What's the idea here? The idea here is exactly that the unexpected is practically what happens every day in a small startup, okay? Is the unexpected, what we were not expecting. So if you plan too much, okay, if you plan too much, surprises can be bad because it doesn't go to the plan. But if you are open to the opportunities, you are open to the surprises, you will be able to to manage them, to leverage them. Okay, so it's good not to predict and not to try to prevent everything, because if everything, almost the unexpected, the unforeseen, is practically what happens every day, day by day in a small startup, you shouldn't be so restrict with your planning and take advantage of the opportunities that the unforeseen, the unpredicted, the role of this in your business. A good example, why is not okay? Profit from the surprise. A good example of that is the famous pivoting. You pivot because when you start with the market in a product and discover that this product is not useful for the market that you were thinking, so you pivot. That's exactly the idea. We'll see that this market is not adequate, and so you pivot. Use serendipity in your favor. Look for meetings, events, and information that are unforeseen and use them for your benefit, okay? Leverage the contingencies. That's the idea. I have a good example. I also studied a software company in Brazil that this guy wanted to internationalize, to go abroad, but he didn't have any specific market. He only decided that Brazil wasn't enough, okay? And he met a cousin, in the funeral of his uncle. The uncle of the person that I studied died, and a cousin came from United States, from Florida, from Miami, and it was in the funeral, and they start talking, and this cousin was in more or less the same area, same sector, and they decided that the cousin would be his reseller in the United States. So he entered the United States because he met a cousin, a distant cousin that he didn't know, in a funeral of his uncle. It's a very good example of serendipity and why important. So how important is serendipity in your business? Well, in summary, the guiding principles of effective decision making are: start with your means, bird in hand, who you are, what you know, and whom you know. Okay. Then imagine the possibilities. Imagine what you can achieve, the product, the market, based on your means. Okay. Second principle: focus on the downside risk, affordable loss. Okay. Limit your risk by making clear what you can afford to lose. Okay. Instead of trying to calculate the net present value of each potential investment or each project. The other one is form partnerships, the crazy quilt. Build partnership with new stakeholders. Be always open to bring aboard new stakeholders because they pre-commit to you, to your venture, and they bring abroad knowledge and resources that you don't have. And finally, leverage contingencies. Use bad news that seems to be bad news and surprises as opportunities of clues for new markets and new combination of your means. So that's it. Here, if you want to go deeper, this presentation will be available to you. There is a very nice video. It's called The 10th Myths of Entrepreneurship. You can find in YouTube. Okay. That's a brief description of what we talked here, but in a different way. And these two books that I think are very useful. The first one is a textbook on effectual entrepreneurship. And the second one is a book written by Sarasvathy that she explained deeply the concepts, her research, and it's more academic, it's a little bit heavy. I would recommend for you that you want to read basically the myth of entrepreneurship and the textbook. It will be very useful. So that's it. That's my presentation.
Thank you so much, Carlos. It's a very interesting presentation. Thanks a lot for sharing with us. We actually received some also interesting questions. And before I start reading them, I just wanted to ask our attendees if any of you want to ask this question out loud. I know right now you cannot turn your microphones on, but I can invite you on stage so you can actually ask Carlos yourself. If you feel like, just raise your hand or drop me in chat, I will read it right away. But while we're waiting, maybe I can start with the question of Selassie. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly still. So there is a long question. Maybe I will divide it into two parts. So the question is, when you are now starting out, how do you find these alliances? How do you deal with compensating stakeholders in this early stage? So maybe we can first think, how do we find these alliances, and then how do we compensate the stakeholders?
Okay, there's a very good one. First, how you find these alliances? You have to be out there, okay? Not staying home behind a computer. You won't find. You have to be out there, okay? When you're talking to customers, when you're talking to colleagues, you're talking to friends. That's why it's important that you have your pitch, because you can explain quickly even to strangers what your business are. That's when you will find your alliances, okay? The pitch, in my personal opinion, is not only for investors. The pitch is for everybody that's interested in listening. And the alliances are much related with the lemonade concept, is related with the crazy quilt, because the serendipity is that it will make opportunities happen that you can find in the stakeholders. Okay, so my quick answer to you is how you find the alliances with the serendipity, always looking for unexpected contacts and always ready to show your product. You have to be the seller in your company every time. And how to deal with compensate. This is another completely different thing, okay? The idea here is to make decisions based on alliances that will bring resources that you don't have. How you compensate that will be, I don't know, will be part of your team. You have a stock option. Is that the way of compensate? Okay, with the alliances, the prospect of a new business. Okay, but this is, let's say, is the second part of the decision. First, you get the stakeholder, and then you try to make what will be available for them, will be interesting for them to compensate. Okay, I think I have answered the questions. Another one?
Another question we have from Natalia, also a long one, so let me read it carefully. The effectuation method sounds to be a very pragmatic style of operational management of the startup, to be grounded, reasonable. But isn't it limiting the ambitions of the founders to shoot for the stars? Isn't it limiting the scalability potential of the startup?
Okay, very good question. And why this question? Because here we're prioritizing the means, and probably Natalia think, okay, I have the means, but I don't have much means. So if I want to be ambitious, will I be able to really achieve my ambition if I only thinking about the few means that I have? I think that more or less what Natalia was thinking. The idea here is you can shoot for the stars, okay? One thing is your operational goals. You are talking about operational management. This you are right. This is about making decisions, day by day decisions, okay? So it's related to operational management, yes, okay? So operational goals, operational objectives, using your expression, it's useful for, effectuation is useful for that. But it doesn't mean that you don't want to conquer the world, but you are in the first stages of your startup, okay? To conquer the world, you have to be a much bigger company, okay, and more mature. So you use another kinds of logics, and you probably won't use effectuation anymore, because you have a market, established market, you know a little bit more about your customers, and you'll be able to really think better and make different decisions based on different logic, okay? So you can be operational and use effectuation, but in the first stages. And I think it's something that I didn't say, and maybe it's a good idea. You can be a visionary in the sense that your ambitions, you can have your ambitions, okay? You can want to dominate a market, you want to be a reference in, I don't know, social entrepreneurship, but you won't be able to achieve this higher goal without thinking about your day-by-day operational targets, okay? So let's make a difference between your ambition, okay, and your day-by-day. And you're right, this is operational, is decision-making, okay? I think I answered the questions at the end. Do you think so?
I think so. Natalia is also thanking you for this answer, and I think the question itself was very interesting.
Yeah, because I have to imagine exactly what the person meant by the question.
We actually have a good question from Paulo. Paulo, if you want, I can again invite you on stage. So Paulo wants you to show us one more time the slide.
The casual.
Yeah.
Well, it's complicated. It's you're right. It's not easy. Okay, it's complicated. I tried to be as simple as I could, but I don't think I will be able to explain very clearly to you what's the difference. I can go back, no problem. I will explain again, but I recommend you to read about this with Sarasvathy, because it's complicated. It's not easy. Okay, I think it's this one. What's happening here? Okay. The idea here, let's use planning, okay? Casual logic, it plans. You can plan. You're able to plan. And effectual logic are circumstances that you're not able to plan. So casual logic works when you're planning. When you're planning, you know exactly where you want to go, okay? And you have the resources, or if you don't have, you buy the resources to achieve that objective that are in your planning. You define the goals, you plan how to get to these goals, and how you plan allocating the resources, okay? Effectual logic is no planning, is what is technically called emerging strategy, okay? There's no strategy at all, as Mintzberg would say. You don't have a clear strategy because things, you cannot plan very well because there's much uncertainty, okay? You don't know your market, you don't know your product, There's lots of uncertainty related to where you will go and what will achieve your goals. So when you have too much uncertainty, you use better effectual logic because you don't plan. Okay, you have more or less the idea, as Natalia was telling. I want to shoot for the stars. I have more or less the idea of the direction that I want to go, but I don't know if I will manage that in the next year or this month. I will have to operationalize. I have to work. I have to make decisions in my company, everyday decisions. So I use effectuation logic because I have few resources and I'm not able to plan because the uncertainty related to my business is too big. So casual logic, lots of planning, I know where I'm going. Effectual logic, no planning, lots of uncertainty, I have to rely on my means, okay? This is a oversimplification, okay? Just to give you a taste of what effectuation and causation is, okay? This is much more complicated than this, but in simple words, planning, certainty, planning, causation. Uncertainty, no planning, effectuation, basically.
Carlos, maybe we can open the slide with the triangles actually, because Paulo wanted to see like about the differences of this first triangle and the second triangle. I mean, maybe visually it will be somehow.
This is an example of Sarasvathy, okay, of her book, the book that I showed at the end, the purple cover. It was an example in marketing, okay? This is an example, is more operational. I like this word, Natalia. The operational to show the steps in marketing, okay? So, repeating. Let me see here. Here, when you are in causation, let me see if I can manage to use this. In causation, horrible. Zoom is not that good. The causation, you first start with definition. What I say, first you define your market. You already know your market, okay? Now it's a matter of operationalizing your market to reach the customer, okay? In the case of effectuation, no. You first have to first identify your means that are already explained, the means, then to identify your stakeholders, your partners, and then you'll find your market, okay? In the case of causation, first you define the market, and then you manage how to get to your customer. In the case of effectuation, no. You first have your means, then your partners. Let me show here. First you have your means. Sorry. Something happened here. Sorry.
I think we should just go back.
I don't know what happened. No, it's not working. Okay, just a moment. Sorry for that. Let's see if there's any questions while I manage to see what I've done wrong here.
It's okay. I mean, technical issues happen. No, we don't have any other questions, but maybe after the explanation of triangles, I can ask my question as the last.
Finally. So what's your question, Zarina?
Paulo, I hope we answered your question. If anything, drop the message. Thank you, Carlos. And my question is, I think quite simple. I was just wondering if there are any kind of sectors that like you can use the effectuation properly, and some sectors you cannot actually like somehow use it for. Maybe it's more complicated.
No. There's no specific sectors. I would call a specific circumstances, specific contexts. Okay, a specific concepts context is when you have lots of uncertainty. You don't know the future. Okay, this can be in any sector. Okay, if you are working sector that are more mature, that changes slowly, so probably are sector that you won't use effectuation. Okay, but sectors that are changing all the time, and you have lots of uncertainty related to the future, and you have to make decisions. So effectual logic would be more helpful. And for example, the example that I gave here, that's why I'm here with the sponsorship of Seedstar, is first stages of a startup. In any sector, the first stage are lots of uncertainty. Okay, so it will be better to use effectuation logic. But I wouldn't call sectors. Okay, I think better if you think about uncertainty. It's too risky. You don't have to know what the future, so you use effectuation. And then you can see if your sector is related to this context. So you evaluate based on that. Usually, when you can plan very well, effectuation maybe is not the best way. Maybe causation is best. But the concept, the basic concept, the idea, the fundamental idea of effectuation is lots of uncertainty. Okay.
Thank you so much. And maybe we can finalize with the last question. So this is very good. Like Paula is just asking. So yes, lots of times when we have to prepare our pitch decks, we need to measure our market size. Like we are asked to measure our market size. So how can we implement this? And I think this is very nice question.
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't know if you really know your market. Okay, just usually in they recommend these because people always think in causation terms. They want to know what your market is. You have already evaluated your market. But to be honest, when you really talk to these advisors and specialists, they will tell you it's just to have an idea because you really don't know your market. Okay, it's just a figure to make your investor a little bit more comfortable with you because you don't really know, especially if it's a new product. Okay, if it's a product that you are in established sectors, maybe you would be able to have an idea of what your market is, but usually you really don't have, and it changes a lot. Okay, it's good to have a market size so you can talk to the bank or to investor or to convince other persuade people, but it's a figure that everybody knows that will change. Okay.
Thank you, Carlos. So I think we can slowly wrap up the entire session. Thanks everyone for your questions. Like this Q&A session was quite hot. I think we received really questions.
Good to have good difficult questions. I like good questions. Good questions.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And of course, Carlos, thank you so much for actually preparing this presentation and sharing with us this knowledge. I mean, for me, it was very interesting, and I'm sure for our attendees as well. Yeah, I see in the chat, they're all writing that it was very interesting. I've shared with you all in chat the information where you can mail me. Also, you will receive this presentation together with the YouTube video where we'll upload the webinar. So you can have a look again, and maybe if any other questions will appear, you will also have Carlos's information, so you can mail him. If there are any anyone who wants to join Seedstars Mentorship Hub, I also shared the link, so feel free to join us. Thanks a lot, Carlos. Everyone have good evening, day, wherever you're based. So please take care, stay safe, and see you on our next events.
Okay, see you there.
Bye-bye. Thank you.